Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Today is one of those days that's going to change your life. I'm so sure of it. This episode is mind-blowing, cutting-edge, state-of-the-art, at-home tests, so you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go to a doctor's office. You don't have to go to a lab somewhere to have blood drawn. An at-home test that can take a few drops of your blood easily with a finger prick and can take stool and even saliva and do an immense amount of genome work on the microbiome and of the mitochondria of your body, which are also bacteria, and understand exactly what you need to eat to bring everything back into balance and to make your gut bacteria work for you instead of against you. We can heal leaky gut. We can heal all kinds of autoimmune issues that are triggered by and at its root caused by dysbiosis. So this is very exciting. If you listen to episode 440, the one right before this, I had a gastroenterologist who has been working for 14 years, helping people heal the gut with food. This episode really complements that one because now we're taking something to a whole new level where now you get to determine exactly what foods, specifically for you right now, specifically for the very complex and individual microbiome matrix that is so specific to you. No two people in the world have the same makeup of gut bacteria. And so, of course, not one exact diet fits all, right? Like, why is it that some people can eat bananas and some people can't? It's because of our gut, and it all starts there. And we can even heal food allergies by following this method. So I'm so excited for you to listen to today's episode. I want to let you know that I always ask founders and owners of companies to offer discounts to the listener. So Naveen has offered a discount for listeners. If you choose to do his at-home test, you're going to use coupon code LTH when you go to his website, Viome, Viome, and you use the coupon code LTH. And I want to let you know that his website has a discount right now. He does have things on, I don't even want to call it on sale, but he does have things at a discounted rate, and you'll get an even further discount by using the coupon code LTH. But there will come a time that those discounts on the website go away. You'll still get a discount by using coupon code LTH. So go to Viome.com, Viome, use coupon code LTH and get a further discount. Enjoy today's interview. It's a doozy for sure. And I can't wait to have him back on the show. My husband and I have ordered the kit and we're going to be doing it. And so the next time I have him on the show, I will be sharing our experience of it, and I'm very, very excited. I've already told some friends about this, and every single one of them said, "How can I get my hands on this kit? This sounds amazing." So I have a feeling that everyone's really going to enjoy today's interview and make you think about your bacteria in your body in a new way. Thank you so much for sharing this episode. Thank you so much for supporting the Learn True Health podcast. Come join our Facebook group. If you end up if you get a kit from Viome, Viome, and use the coupon code LTH there. If you end up going to Viome.com and doing the kit, please come to the Learn True Health Facebook group and share your results, as I will share mine as well. I'd love to hear from you guys and hear what you think. Excellent. Let's figure out what we can do to feed our mitochondria and feed our microbiome to achieve absolute amazing health together. It's so exciting. Enjoy today's interview. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 441. I am so excited for today's guest. We have Naveen Jain on the show. Viome is your website, is your business, Viome.com. I'm very excited about this, and you are offering a discount to listeners, the LTH coupon code they can use. You give testing that allows for us to get precise food and supplement recommendations based on our gut microbiome and mitochondrial health. And this is fascinating. So many of my listeners have asked me what food allergy tests they should get. And every week my listeners are asking about different probiotics and how they can heal the gut. And many of my guests have said that if you want to heal any disease, you have to start by healing the gut microbiome. It is that important. And of course, now we know more and more that if you don't have mitochondrial health, you have disease. And so your company is helping people to get right to the root and solve this crisis, this health crisis we have of chronic disease. I'm really excited today because you said you wanted to talk about how we can, as a society, move in the direction so that chronic disease becomes optional. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ashley. It is just amazing that we are living in this world of COVID, and it is hard to even mention that as a humanity, we really have done a great job of infectious diseases. These pandemics like COVID happens once every 100 years, right? But at the end of the day, the world has this epidemic of chronic diseases. I mean, think about it. We know, or every one of us knows, at least a dozen people who are suffering from obesity or diabetes or depression or anxiety or autoimmune diseases. And you can give the names like heart diseases or Alzheimer or Parkinson's, but these are just the symptoms. These are just the symptoms of chronic inflammation. So one of the things that I realize is that chronic diseases are really caused by chronic inflammation. And in terms of chronic inflammation, the root cause of almost all of the chronic inflammation, especially the systemic chronic inflammation, tends to be gut microbiome. And we somehow feel that we have discovered some new science and new biology about human beings, and we are so much smarter. But you go back 2,500 years ago, and Hippocrates said the same thing. All diseases begin in the gut. Let food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be the food. So it's not that we have become any wiser or any smarter, except that now we have a scientific way of actually looking at inside the body and finding out what is going on. So if I were to describe Viome in one simple way, is we digitize the human body. We look at every single gene that's expressed in the human body. So we look at the human gene expression, mitochondrial gene expression, the gut microbial gene expression, the oral microbial gene expression. And I think, as you mentioned, that these things all work together. Unfortunately, it's not like these things are just siloed, and what happens in your gut doesn't stay in the gut. It changes our body. What happens in our mouth when we chew our food changes what happens in the gut, that changes what happens in the body. So all these things are interconnected, and as we go along here, we're going to talk a lot more about the latest research and latest science of what we are learning.
I'm going to just come out and say the big elephant in the room. Let's just clear the elephant in the room right now. A lot of my listeners are really interested in doing, like the different gene tests, but they're afraid of, and myself included, my naturopathic physician was suggesting I do one of these gene tests, but I don't want to give my genetic code over to a company that's going to sell it to a pharmaceutical company. Does Viome promise to not sell our RNA or DNA sequences or the information of our body to other corporations? Do you keep our information protected and safe?
So first of all, the short answer is yes. I'm going to give you a slightly longer
I'd
answer
love a longer
as well.
answer.
Yeah. So the longer answer is, remember, your DNA or your genes never change, right? So that means you're born with your DNA, you're born with the genes, your genes never change. Now, anytime someone who is telling you they can give you some recommendations based on your genes is simply fooling you, because here is why. Now, imagine if I made the recommendations to you based on your genes, and a year later you gain 200 pounds. Has your genes changed? No. Your recommendation better change because you're not going in the right direction. Now, let's assume you also develop depression. Now you have autoimmune diseases. Now you have diabetes. You have every chronic disease known. And now your genes still haven't changed. So how can you possibly tell me that somehow the solution lies in the genes? What the diseases develop when your gene expression, That means your expression of gene is constantly changing. Your genes don't change. So if you're not looking at gene expression, you will never be able to know what is causing a disease. And that's literally how cancers are formed or everything.
Mm.
It is the microbial gene expression signaling the human genes expressions and then literally working in coordination that causes almost every single chronic disease. If you're not born with a disease, you're not going to get a disease unless you actually trigger it. And this triggers happens with our choices that we make every day. Now, the interesting thing about gene expression is the gene expression, I mean, genes are like your thoughts, right? So you can have good thoughts or you can have bad thoughts. And as long as you don't express any bad thoughts, there is no crime that happens. The same way, you can have good genes or bad genes. If your bad genes are not being expressed, then you are in good shape. It is really about expression of genes. And as you may or may not know, the Viome is the only company in the world that actually measures the gene expression because no one has figured out how to sequence RNA because they all look at DNA, which is genes, rather than RNA, which is really where the gene expression comes from. And, as we go along, we'll tell you a lot more about that. So the point is, just want to make one more point. Now, assume hypothetically that I looked at your gut and I got the gene expression of it. God forbid, let's assume, somehow, somewhere our data got stolen, right? Let's just assume, because anybody who tells you that they have, complete foolish safeguard. The fact is we are HIPAA compliant. We are every single security we put in place. But let's assume, God forbid, it does get stolen. Then what? Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, since your gene expression is always changing, someone can beat the out of you and you still have a different gene expression, so they won't be able to match it back to you. That means since it's a dynamic environment, we know what is happening right now, and 6 months later or a year later it's going to be completely different. And that's why it is less critical to worry about gene expression than about genes. I hope that makes sense.
You said some very interesting things in there. Your microbiome gene expression triggers your body's gene expression. So we know the microbiome is incredibly important, but the microbiome is reaching out and sending signals to our body, and our body's own gene expression will change based on our microbiome's health.
Of course, I mean, think about that, right? I mean, 70% of our immune system is along our gut lining. How does our immune system get trained? So it's literally the signals that microbial, what I would call micro poop, which is the technical term is metabolites, the microbiome metabolites. That means the molecules that are produced by the microbiome based on the food they eat, they produce the certain molecules, and I call them micro poop because they're literally the poop of these microbiome. And sometimes these poops are really, really good. They produce short chain fatty acids such as butyrate. Now, so the butyrate is a microbiome metabolite or microbiome poop that literally triggers our immune system to calm down. So it's anti-inflammatory, right? And there
Mm.
are things like that microbiome produced a molecule called LPS, lipopolysaccharide, that literally tells the immune system to start creating more pro-inflammatory compound because it says, hey, look, the bad stuff is here, start creating the pro-inflammatory stuff so we can kill that stuff, right? So it's constantly interacting with the immune system. Just know that our immune system does not have eyes and ears. Our epithelial cells don't have eyes and ears. It is simply acting on the biochemicals or the chemicals that are being produced by the microbiome. And based on what is being produced, our body changes. So, for example, most people probably know that 90% of our serotonin is produced in the gut, not in our brain. And the serotonin is, as most people know, is the molecule that actually makes you feel good. So serotonin makes you feel good, right? So the interesting thing is 90% of it is produced in the gut, and it's produced by the human epithelial cells. But how does the human cells actually know when to produce it? That is triggered by the gut microbiome. So the microbiome triggers the chemical that actually causes the epithelial cells to produce the serotonin. So they literally are always interacting with each other, and you will find that that's why that without microbiome, so your genes are necessary for you to be born, but you couldn't live if you didn't have the microbiome in your body. In fact, majority of, if you look at all the genes that are expressed in our body, 99% of them are expressed by the microbes, which are foreign to our human body. So if you look at the human genes, Ashley, less than 22,000 genes that are expressed in the human genes are protein coding genes. And when you start to look at the microbes, 39 trillion microbes in our gut and a trillion in our mouth and all over our body, they are expressing somewhere between 2 million to 20 million genes. And that means at any point of time, we have probably less than 1% of the genes that are expressed in the body are our own, and rest are all coming from somewhere else, right? So we are literally a container for all these organisms. And right, I mean, that's really we are a beautiful container for these organisms. And I might even argue that these organisms may have actually created us for their own benefit, right? And if you are interested, I'll give you my creation story of how I think that humans may have been created.
Well, we definitely have to hear that, especially when you look at it that way. When you look at it from the standpoint, like we're the planter box that the garden lives
Yeah.
in. When you realize that 6 pounds of gut biome sitting in our digestive system is trillions of cells and does 99% of the gene expression of our entire body. And it does things like convert our thyroid. 25% of our T3 is converted there. Our serotonin's made there. Are the short chain fatty acids are made there. So much of our nutrients are digested there. We know that when someone has an unhealthy or a sick microbiome, that their entire body becomes sick. There's a direct relationship. And so, yes, it's not us in that we didn't grow. It's not like the cells of my eye that I grew or the cells of my finger that I grew, but it is ours to take care of or to neglect.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
just like having a pet, and we have to take care of the microbiome. We can't just eat whatever we want. If you eat whatever we want, we're going to get the common diseases. I often say in the show, if you want to be a statistic, do what everyone else is doing. If you don't want to be a statistic, like the number one killer is heart disease. 1 in 3 people will
Yep.
have a cancer diagnosis in their lifetime. 1 in 3 people have prediabetes, are diabetic, and are obese. All these diseases are on the rise, even though we spend, as a nation, I'm talking about the United States, but most industrialized nations are similar to us in that we spend the most out of every nation on quote unquote healthcare, and yet we come in dead last in things like infant mortality and other illnesses, other chronic illnesses. And your mission is to help build a society where chronic illness is an option, where someone could choose to not be chronically sick. I love that you also mentioned if you're not born with a disease, if you didn't develop a disease in utero, right, and you weren't born with a disease, then any disease that comes after that comes after birth, is optional. Very interesting. So I want to talk about those points. Let's start though by going back to what you said about your creation story, because
Yeah.
it's interesting. I've had an expert on the mitochondria on the show, and he said, and this just blew my mind, that the mitochondria of our cells are a different DNA than the rest of our body, and so at one point we merged with mitochondria and made an agreement that they would be part of us. So we really do have foreign living organisms as in a beautiful relationship with us. So tell us about your
Yeah.
creation story.
Well, so I think I think as you started that, think about it, that microorganisms have been on planet Earth for 3.5 billion years, right? The humans are give or take a couple of 100,000 years old, right? So how do you think the human came to be? And this is my tongue-in-cheek story, and then I'm going to tell you the scientific basis of all how it actually happens, right? But this tongue-in-cheek story, once you hear it, you can never unhear it, right? So now imagine this world. So close your eyes and imagine this world. All these microorganisms are living in the, in Africa. And then one day they all got together and said, we are sick and tired of living in a small space. We want to take over the world. And they all looked at each other. And one of the microbes says, I have an idea. What is your idea? What if we can create something bipedal? And trillions of us could live right inside it. And now all we have to do is keep this person, we can make it crave any food we want, and they're going to run all over the world, find the food for us. All we have to do is keep this thing healthy. Now, we can make it crave anything we want, and it's going to go everywhere, it's going to poop everywhere, it's going to spread us around, and we're going to just take over the world. And they actually created humans, and they named it called humans. And now, right after they created humans, they started to wonder, oh my God, what have we just done? As you can possibly imagine, we are so worried about artificial intelligence, and we keep wondering, what if someday the AI becomes smarter than us? What will happen to us humans? So microbes had exactly the same thought. They all reassemble and say, Master, Master, what have we done? We created this monster called humans. What if someday it became smarter than us? What will happen to all of us? Master says, not to worry for a second. We took care of all those problems. Master, what have you done? So Master says, well, first thing we did is right inside their cell, we put one of our brothers right inside their cell. And can you believe that they call that mitochondria? It provides all the energy for their cell. And we keep in direct communication with us all the time. We are bacterial brothers. We talk to them all the time. At any point of time, the humans don't take good care of us. We tell our mitochondrial brother to shut the energy down, and they're all dead. Master, that is brilliant. However, you're forgetting something. What, son? They are starting to develop this thing called brain. What are we going to do about that? Master says, that's the first thing we thought about. What do you think we did? We put a direct connection to their brain. And can you believe they call that a vagus nerve? They thought they're going to name it after Las Vegas, thinking what happens in the gut is going to stay in the gut. They're so wrong. What happens in the gut goes everywhere. Now, through that vagus nerve, we control their mood, we control their behavior, we control their thinking, we control their craving. And guess what? If they want to feel good, they better take good care of us, because we're not going to let them produce most of the serotonin. 90% of that, we're going to produce it ourselves. So ladies and gentlemen, we are the ones that actually are the puppets, and our puppet masters are these trillions of organisms that are constantly pulling the strings and telling us what to eat, what to do, how to think, and what happens to us. And that actually, it's a tongue-in-cheek story, Ashley, but I can tell you some of the research that came out. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a research that showed that actually that our social behavior, whether we are extrovert or introvert, it actually is driven by our microbiome.
Wow.
Our mood is driven by our microbiome. Our cravings for the food is driven by microbiome, so much so they did an experiment on different type of sweeteners, and it turns out that microbiome releases the signal directly to the brain that releases the dopamine that is specifically designed for the sugar molecule. So they wanted to test the theory, is it just a sweetness versus actual preference for the sugar? So they did the artificial sweetener. Microbiome hated that. They wanted that. They wanted their sugar. So they thought maybe it is because the amount of calorie that sugar has. So they actually created this molecule that had identical to sugar, except that it cannot be digested. That means it won't produce any calorie. Guess what? They still had the same preference for the sugar molecule. That means they literally want their sugar. And that's what happens. When we eat sweet stuff, we crave sweet stuff, right? But now, interestingly, these organisms that make you crave for that stuff, if somehow you can use 2 weeks of willpower not to eat sugar, guess what happens? You actually don't even feel like eating anymore, because we kill the organisms that are making you crave that stuff. And that's literally what happens. That, some people, you and I look at some people and say, oh my God, how can you just eat this salad? And some people say, I love it, I enjoy it. And for our microbes, it's like, huh? I don't want that stuff, right? I want my bread, I want my pasta, right? I want my pizza. So my point is that other very interesting thing we noticed, Ashley, was that our blood sugar or diabetes or glycemic response is completely dependent on what is happening in our gut. So we actually did a large study that showed that we are able to predict the glucose response for a specific food based on what is going on inside your gut. That means two people can eat the same slice of bread, and one person will get 6 times the glycemic response, and other person get none. And we know intuitively, we know some people who can eat bread all day and never get fat, and some people like me can smell bread and get fat, right? And we all know that happens, right? And that thing is, all that is driven by our gut. So, the other interesting thing that we talked about cancer and heart disease, I'm going to tell you something very interesting we found. That in the last 30 days, there were two research papers published, one in Cell and one in Nature. And they looked at about 20 different types of cancer. And what they realized was every single cancer tumor had microbiome inside the tumor. And that microbiome was very specific to each cancer, not only providing the energy to the cancer cells, but also protecting it from the immune system. Remember, the microbes can tune the immune system down. So they were releasing the anti-inflammatory signal to let the cancer actually continue to grow so immune system doesn't kill it.
Wow.
Now imagine, isn't that amazing that now we are able to simply look at, there is a company that's looking at it, is just looking at the microbiome in the cell, in the blood, plasma, and predict that not only you have cancer, but what type of cancer, just by simply looking at microbiome. In fact, we applied for FDA now that by looking at the microbiome in our saliva, we can predict the stage 1 or stage 0, the precancerous cells in your mouth, oral cancer, with 94% accuracy just by looking at the saliva microbiome. And it is really amazing that how oral microbiome act and is communicating directly with the gut microbiome is a constant communication. So essentially, or in fact, our body. So other thing that's really very fascinating to me is almost all of the metabolic diseases, and you look at some of the neural diseases like depression or Alzheimer or Parkinson's, many of them are obviously directly tied now to the gut microbiome. So in fact, they were able to do a fecal transplant and were able to actually transfer the depressed person's poop into a person that was not depressed, and they actually, the same phenotype goes across. And there was another very interesting research that recent came out, that there was a person who had Alzheimer. And it turns out the person ended up getting a C. diff infection. And for the C. diff infection, they gave you tons of antibiotics and then they do the fecal transplant. And this person, after they got a C. diff infection, they got a fecal transplant. And 6 months later, this person's memory came back. So Alzheimer was reversed simply with changing the microbiome. Think for a second, right? And now what we are learning is just like, when our gut microbiome is behaving improperly, or is what I would say dysbiosis, we get this leaky gut. And these microbes are constantly now going past the epithelial barrier into a blood, and our immune system is constantly inflamed trying to deal with that. The same thing happens when we have leaky gum. That means, remember, when you have a blood, the gums which are inflamed, and now when you brush, you have bleeding, is because that inflammation now, the microbiome from the mouth is now starting to go into the blood, causing the same systemic low-grade chronic inflammation. And what they found was, at least in a couple of papers, that oral microbiome could be a predictor for Alzheimer's disease, depression, and autism, just like the gut. So it's really happening is that when you get the inflammation in your gum, in one of the studies they showed was not only the pathogens move from the mouth to the gut, even the immune cells, the Th17 cells, they actually fluorescence those cells. They saw them move from the mouth all the way to the gut. Right. So that means our immune system cells are moving as well when we have inflammation in the mouth. So when we don't have a good oral hygiene, not only you are actually causing inflammation in the body, you're also causing the inflammation in the gut, which also furthers the inflammation in the body.
There's two things. One is measuring like to screen, right? So you can use the microbiome to screen for cancer. You can use the microbiome to screen for If there's dysbiosis in the mouth, for example, which could be a precursor, like you said, to dementia and other problems, we can screen the microbiome and see, okay, what kind of diseases could have been created in the body because of this. So screening or early detection, especially with cancer, early detection is key, but it's not prevention. Prevention is the best key, is the root cause. Because if we could do a course correction or prevent it from becoming a dysbiosis in the first place, that would be the best thing. Um, so here we have people, most of our listeners are really excited about getting even healthier. Some have major health issues, and some are fairly healthy, but they want to get to the next level. So let's just assume that all of us on some level may not have the perfect microbiome, right? We all have some form of dysbiosis or
Mhm.
Homer Simpson gut. I once heard someone refer to the standard American microbiome as like the Homer Simpson of microbiomes because there's so few. It's kind of like a dumbed down microbiome, and that makes us crave really bad food for us.
Mhm.
But so we could grow a new microbiome that would make us crave healthy foods instead of bad foods, that would give us our serotonin so we're happier, that would prevent
Mhm.
diseases, that would heal up the gut so we didn't have leaky gut. Um, and it just cascades into better and better health. Um, does your testing help us do both
Yeah.
screening things, but also then teach us what we can do to regrow a healthier microbiome?
So actually, so the first thing is we don't ever tell you, we're not a diagnostic test. So we don't tell you you have cancer or you have this particular disease because that will be a FDA approved diagnostic test, right? So what we do instead is to look at what is going on inside your body. So we will look at that blood and stool and saliva, and based on that, we can tell you what your cellular health looks like. That means cellular health consists of many things, right? So, in terms of what your oxidative stress looks like, how do your cells behave under stress? What is your cellular senescence looks like? How is your immune system activation, right? What is causing the immune system to be active? So, we will give you things like your gut health, your cellular health, your mitochondrial health, your immune system health, your stress response health, and your biological age, because in some sense, what is your true inside age rather than what your chronological age is. And under each one of those scores, we give you the sub scores, that if your gut health is this, what is causing your gut health to be this poor? Is it because your LPS is too high? Is it because your butyrate is too low? Or is it your sulfide production is too high? Ammonia production is too high? And for after looking at all of that, we say, here are the foods that you should avoid. And for each thing, we tell you why for you specifically. So, for example, the first time when we launched the thing, I did a test and it told me, I honestly thought actually I was eating the healthiest one could. I was really on, I'm a vegan to begin with, and I'm eating spinach and broccoli and cabbage and Brussels sprout. And I was thinking I am going to be the person they're going to put a picture of me and saying, this is what the healthy person looks like. It turns out my gut was so bad, it told me not to eat broccoli and says, your sulfide production in your gut is very high and the broccoli contains very high amount of sulfate. You should lay off the broccoli because the sulfide is causing a lot of inflammation in your gut. Not now my second thing was not to eat spinach because it says your oxalate pathway for your gut microbiome is very poor. That means you eat that spinach that is very high in oxalic acid, it is not going to be digested properly. All the protein that lentils and legumes I was eating, it says is producing a lot of protein fermentation and producing ammonia that was causing issues because I was eating so much of this. That means they were not being digested. Instead, were going to the colon where they were being fermented and microbes were releasing ammonia. So it told me to take a digestive enzyme along with my food to be able to digest that protein so it does not get fermented in the gut. So literally for every food, it says, here is what's going on. Here are the food you should avoid and why. here are my superfoods, and for each one it tells you why, and then it says here are the supplements that you need to keep your body currently correct. So because there are a lot of the things that your body is not currently producing that your body needs, so in the short term you should take these supplements until we can get your microbes to start producing that, right? So say take butyrate so you can at least heal your gut lining while we get the short chain fatty acids to get going. So literally that is what the test does. And what is interesting is come now 3 years later, having followed this, my biological age now, I am in my 40s, even though I'm chronological age is 61. So I'm in my 40s as a biological age, just because I'm able to heal my gut and get my immune system health and mitochondrial health and my cellular health to be really good.
You're in your 60s?
Yeah, 61.
You really do look like your early 40s.
Yeah, so there you have it. My biological age is in my 40s.
I mean, some of us would just do your test because we're vain and we want to look 20 years younger, right?
So actually, I'm going to tell you something very interesting here. So now we looked at this biological age and something really fascinating data that now that we have analyzed, over 250,000 people now, right? So it's a lot of people we have analyzed. And here is the thing that really surprised us. The number one offender of your biological age, that means what makes you really, really old is, now I'm going to say it and I'm going to probably get a lot of hate mail for that, is a keto diet. The ketogenic diet makes people really thin and lose weight in a short term, but technically it completely up their body.
I can believe it. I had several keto doctors on and it sounded really interesting, and my husband and I ended up doing the ketogenic diet with a naturopathic physician where we came in weekly.
Yeah,
We did it for 3
yeah,
months and we were very strict on it, and I've done it about 3 times in my life, but this was a
yeah,
very strong stint of being in constant ketosis for 3 months with this naturopath.
yeah,
And at the end of it, I had developed such bad liver problems that my liver was
yeah.
distended. You could see my liver was sticking out of my gut. It was very
Oh,
inflamed and
yeah,
and painful. And I went for an ultrasound and they said it wasn't cirrhosis, it wasn't fatty liver, it was just inflamed liver. My liver was so bad. All of my liver enzymes were through the roof. Basically, my liver was very damaged. But what was worse was my husband developed incredibly high blood pressure, like scary, like
mm,
worrying about an aneurysm kind of blood pressure, very scary high blood pressure in those 3 months. And so we went for further testing, and he found out that he had such bad kidney damage from the ketogenic diet that it took him over a year of eating a whole food plant-based diet and
yeah,
supplementing to
yeah,
heal his kidneys. And he had been put on several medications in the interim, and are working with a really great naturopath here that's it's a cardiologist, a naturopathic physician who's a cardiologist. He specializes in heart and getting people so healthy they no longer need the high blood pressure medication. And working with him, it took my husband over a year to heal his kidneys and get his blood pressure back down from that event and get off of all the medications. It wasn't worth it. And what I do love.
so my point is, you and I are both going to now probably get canceled.
I'm sorry?
We are both going to be canceled in the cancel culture. The people are going to just think we are the two nut people trying to badmouth keto diet because there are so many fans of keto diet.
You know what? I think my experience with my listeners is that they're very open to learning about and hearing it. And I hope they're not going to just cancel out what we said because they love the keto diet. And I get it. I get it. I was a raving fan of the ketogenic diet. I've looked in all the research and followed the doctors, and I really, really loved it until my husband and I had those
Yep.
experiences. And then I turned around and went, wait a second. I was really ignoring all of the signs that it was deteriorating my health, and it's a very acidic diet. It's a very bad for the gut. It's very it's a way to manipulate the survival mechanism in the body. But is that really health? Is that really going to be long-term health? And so yeah, I have a few friends that are really heavily into keto, and they have been for a few years. And I'm afraid for them in the long term. So you're seeing though that when they analyze cellular age, that it is the one diet that ages people the quickest.
Yeah, so keto diet, essentially, remember the aging is fundamentally the aggregation of all the damage that we are doing to our body, right? And to some extent, the keto diet was one of those biggest offender, followed by paleo diet, by the way. So it's really that all these fad diets that we fall into maybe short term may work for some people, not for others, but they really damage our body. So that, to me, it is all about right balance. You have to eat a balanced food. You can't say carbs are bad. Carbs are not bad. Carbs are needed for your body, right? So point really is there is no such thing as universal healthy diet. A diet that's good for one person may not be good for another person. Or even the foods that are good for you today may not be good for you 6 months from now. Because remember, when you change your food habits, your gut microbial ecosystem completely changes, and then you have to readjust. So it's a constant tuning of your body, just like you have to tune your car once a year. You got to tune your body every couple of times a year to keep this body into a perfect working machine. If you want a great working machine, you got to keep it tuned. And that's what the gut microbes do, is adjusting your diet so you can keep tuning your gut microbiome to stay in homeostasis. And this concept, that another thing that actually I found, the concept of this good microbiome and bad microbiome. And I think that has been just, one of those misnomer about the, just like good genes and bad genes, right? These microbes are actually all work together as one big ecosystem. So think of your gut microbes as a rainforest. That means every step you take in the rainforest can be completely different from each other, yet everything can be lush and green. That means no two people have the same gut microbiome, and both can be extremely healthy, right? So in a sense that it is not about what organisms are there in each person's gut. So that is the second part, that when you talk about health, and this has been a big misnomer in the field of microbiome, and that's the reason why the science has never advanced, is our focus has always been is in genes and microbiome genes and the human genes, the DNA. And what that meant was the focus of microbiome was, tell me who is there. I want to know the names of every organism that is there, somehow thinking that will allow us to find out why people are sick. And the biggest breakthrough for us at Viome was, we said that can't possibly be the problem, because I, being naive, I thought the microorganisms are probably like human beings. That means there are two people who could have completely different microorganisms producing exactly the same thing that may be causing a disease, or the same organisms could be producing completely different thing in two people's gut based on the environment and the ecosystem it finds itself in, right? Because remember, you and I both know, like human beings, depending on which company we are in, our behavior changes, what we do completely changes. Me at work, an entrepreneur; me at home, a dishwasher. What changed? Not me, the environment, right? Suddenly, and it's very interesting that you look at Akkermansia, which is generally most people consider to be a good bacteria. And the Akkermansia can be very good when it is actually taking the fiber and producing butyrate or short chain fatty acid for us. And Akkermansia can be extremely pathogenic and is known to cause many of the diseases, including cancer, when it actually turns into virulent and pathogenic. Right. So it is not about the organism itself, it is the environment. So when you find an organism under attack, so let's assume there is a lot of other uh, pathogens or something that actually the organisms find to be inhospitable, the organisms start to release inflammatory compounds and antibiotics to kill other organisms so it can protect itself. So now the same organism that was producing short chain fatty acid is now producing toxins trying to kill everything else, in turn harming the body that it's inside, right? So point I'm trying to make is this fundamental change that we did at Viome was, we focused on what what these organisms are producing. That means what biochemicals are being produced rather than who they are. Because our body can't see the bacteroidetes. My body cannot see the fusobacteria. My body cannot see Akkermansia ministria. It only can see the chemical signals that are being produced, and it doesn't care why. It only cares about what is being produced, right? So our job now is to look at this ecosystem and saying what biochemicals are being produced. How do we change the input? Like a computer, food is the information. When you give it a new set of information, now the process comes up with a totally different output. So when input changes, your output changes. But in this case, it is a self-modifying operating systems, in a sense that when you change your food, the organisms that can thrive on that food start to grow, and other organisms that can't digest those food starts to wane. And now your ecosystem changes. That means now you have to start changing your diet again so that you can start to create a balance. Because otherwise, when you keep eating the same food, the certain organisms that are really, really good at metabolizing that food, they become in so much quantity, then they start to behave poorly, and they start to form the biofilm, and they start to misbehave. So it's literally about getting the right balance between all of these different organisms to actually digest more, to produce more and more nutrients for us.
I love it.
Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So the trillions of cells in our gut, it doesn't matter what they are. There's a variety. It's like a rainforest. It's more about what they're producing. So don't think of it like it's a bad microbiome or good microbiome. It's what's being produced. What if someone has candida, for example? Like what if someone, in the past we've called that like a bad microbiome. The candida it's really the concern though is the byproducts it's producing are toxic for the body, right?
Interesting thing is, again, every organism. So for example, one of the worst offender is C. diff, right? I mean, everybody knows about C. diff, right? So C. diff can be, I mean, obviously, once you get a C. diff infection, there's not much you can do. You take as much antibiotics as you can, and your only survival thing people have seen is FMT after that, fecal transplant. Now, it's very interesting is almost every one of us has C. diff. It is that when it becomes out of control. That means other organisms, which are good organisms, don't keep it in balance. Then it goes out of proportion. Remember, we need some of these what I would say pathogenic people to constantly keep our immune system primed. So immune system is very interesting. When it is very, very low activity, that means not primed, and suddenly you get infection, your immune system is really not ready for it. So immune system can be too inflamed, it's really bad, or it be too low where it's actually not ready for attack, right? So the best way to do that is to have your immune system ready, but not be at high inflammation. That means at high activation where it's dealing with so much inflammation. And that means little bit of these pathogenic activities actually keeps your immune system primed for you to be actually capable of dealing with when there is a pathogen out there. Right. So, in fact, when we look at our immune system health, when you have low immune system activation, it is bad. And when you have high immune system activation, is bad. And if you want to protect yourself from flu or cold or, for example, COVID, the best thing you really need to do is to right in the middle when it is in the best adult primehood to go take on the enemy.
Fascinating. So here we have a vast microbiome, and we want to create one that is we want to support the body in having a diverse microbiome, because that is what you've described as being optimal for the immune system. With your test, it's testing for the byproducts of the microbiome. So then we can see what's out of balance, because it's not so much, like you said, it's not so much about what bacteria you have, which ones. The body doesn't see that, but the body is affected by their poop, is affected by their byproducts. And some of their byproducts can be incredibly healing for the body. So we want to continue to feed those and give them the nutrients for them to thrive. Like the short chain fatty acids are
Are good.
sorry?
So they're very good.
Y-
SCFA, they are very good,
Right.
but they need fiber.
Right, and they
Yeah.
need fiber. They need, so you want to be eating like the potatoes, for example, instead of the white bread, right? You want to eat the a variety of fruits and vegetables. But the problem is that then we have these other microbiome that might be overproducing something that is harmful. And so your test will say, okay, this substance is too high in your gut, so you want to limit these foods. Does your test also tell us what we should eat more of or continue to
Yes.
eat to support
Yeah.
and grow a more diverse and healthy
Yeah.
microbiome?
Yes, so we give you superfoods, which are here are your top 20 or 25 foods you should eat as much as you can. Here are your foods of another 500 foods that you should enjoy as much as you can. Here are the foods you should minimize, and here are the foods you should avoid, right? So we lit all those four categories. And the one thing we are doing next is actually, which is, we have not announced yet, but I'm going to tell you since you asked, that we always found that, getting these supplements, which are augmentation to the food, how do we only give people what they need rather than giving as much as you can get? What we found is that anytime you give body something it doesn't need, it actually has to work hard to get rid of it, and that means it only causes damage to your body.
Wow.
So we thought, what if you can actually create supplements made to order for each individual, one capsule at a time? That means if I looked at your body and say, here are the 60 things you need. Here are the herbs you need, the food extracts, minerals, vitamins, enzymes, amino acids, prebiotics, probiotics. And if you only need 22 milligram of lycopene, there is no way to find it. What if we create these things for each individual made to order? And we're going to be launching that next month. So we're launching that in August. Basically making make to order after we do the test. And so you need 22 milligram of lycopene, 11 milligram of elderberry, 2 milligrams of chicory root, and we need these 60 ingredients. We literally take those exactly in that dosage for you and put them in these 8 capsules in a sachet and make them for you only that time. And then when we do the retest, you can see all your health markers, what they were after you took all the changes, what they changed to, and then we reformulate again as we do the new results. So literally constantly reformulating and giving you a new recommendation as your body changing and adapting. So imagine every 4 months, you get completely new set of food recommendations, new set of supplements that you need, and they're all sent to you every single month and made just for you.
Fascinating. So you recommend that someone would take this test every 4 months because they want to continue to adjust their diet. Obviously, diet is key, but then they can also have supplements made to order
Yeah.
for their specific gut health and their body health.
We also take all your superfoods that you need and we actually extract their stuff and put them in these supplements. Because what happens is the two things, like for example, we know you may need, say, example, fisetin, that is really is in strawberries. But the problem is that first of all, you have to eat 5 pounds of strawberries to get enough fisetin. And the second problem is that it also contains a lot of histamine producing product in the strawberry. So a lot of people are, in fact, we will say strawberry is a void for you, and but the strawberry extract actually could be in the supplement. People say, wait a sec, how can the strawberry extract maybe in my supplement when you're asking me to avoid strawberry? And the answer is we literally just took out the fisetin from the strawberry and we gave them as a supplement, and we took out all the other histamine producing stuff that is going to cause you problems. So it is quite possible the food may be a void, but the underlying ingredients can actually be in the supplement that you need. Does it make sense to you?
Absolutely. Now, when you went back and you took the test and it told
Yeah.
you you should take a digestive enzyme
Yes.
because you've been fermenting your food instead of
Yep.
digesting it, and you should avoid these foods but eat more of these foods. Even though you eat like a whole food plant-based diet, you eat a very, very
Yep.
healthy, wholesome diet. You made these slight changes, which don't seem bad. Cut out this vegetable, include this vegetable, take an enzyme. That's almost no effort at all to do. What health changes did you see in your body take place after doing that?
So let me, it's another interesting thing that I think you'll find fascinating is that, my wife had completely different. So her things, so almost, everything that was my superfood was her avoid, and my avoid was her superfood. And it became a challenge. We've been all told to eat together in a same dinner. It became a challenge for us to start following those diets, and we ended up making two things, one that was good for her and one that was good for me, and we started to adjust our smoothies, because for even right now, coconut water is her avoid and coconut water is my superfood. So guess what we do? We make the smoothie and I put the coconut water after it's made, right?
Right.
So point is, but what I'm trying to say is that she's healthy, she works out every day, and she tells me, why do I need to do anything? I am just so healthy already, right? And when she did that test and followed the diet, the husbands are always, or your spouse is probably the dumbest person you ever know, because they think, what do they know? They're not a doctor. How can they be telling me, how their company be telling me that do this, right? He's not a doctor. What does he know? So I said, look, why don't you do the test and follow it for 3 months and you'll find out for yourself. She does the test and she says, it's amazing. Now I used to always feel tired in the afternoon and I just needed 15 minutes nap. And I just thought it is just, something it is needed. Now I just don't feel tired all day. I just never take a nap. And it's like, wow. And she tells me quietly, and all my baby fat is gone. And like, I didn't know how to respond to it. All I could say was, what baby fat? I never saw it.
Good husband. Good husband.
Like, point I'm trying to make is like, for me, I don't need more energy, but God, after I change my diet, I feel so good. I jump out of the bed at 4 a.m. in the morning, jumping with joy, wanting to do things, and I can work 17, 18-hour days, and I work 7 days a week and never feel tired.
I love it. I love it. So both of you, even though you were healthy to begin with, saw total improvements in your health in a few months just by making sure your diet was going to be optimal for
Yeah.
the for what your gut biome produces. So
Mhm.
it's just it's so cool to think about how we can just cut out one food, include another, and all of a sudden our microbiome is producing better chemicals for our body. And then our whole body responds on every level, and energy and weight loss and mental clarity, even hormone, function. Now
Everything.
you have two tests.
Yeah.
You offer, so at Viome.com, you offer the gut intelligence service, which I'm really surprised by your prices, to be honest, because I paid over $200. It was close to $300 to have my food allergy testing done, and and I thought your services would be like $1,000, and the gut intelligence service is cheaper than what it cost for me to get my food allergy testing done. And I'm thinking that if I followed your system, that in terms of the food recommendations, I'd have far better outcomes than following the IgG food intolerance test. So you've got this gut intelligence service, and then you have another one, which is the health intelligence service, and that includes the gut intelligence service. Can you tell us about each one and why
Sure.
one person, why we should choose one over the other, or should we all just choose the health intelligence service because it includes so much more?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, the one thing is the price. I mean, look, if you can't afford the health intelligence service, then you use the gut intelligence service. And again, the health intelligence services looks at your body, which is human gene expression, mitochondrial gene expression. That means we're now looking at your cellular health. We are looking at your immune system health. We're looking at your mitochondrial health. We're looking at your stress response. We're looking at your biological age. All that stuff also goes into our recommendation. So if you're not doing the test, then you still get very, very good recommendations, but only based on what's happening in your gut microbiome. So gut intelligence test only looks at the gut microbiome. Health intelligence looks at the gut microbiome and all the stuff that's happening in the human body from the blood test. So it is essentially at-home test when you order. It comes in, by the way, it's just, I don't know if you ever seen the test or not. It is a beautiful kit. So it's literally like a Louis Vuitton silver metallic box, right? But the interesting thing is, because we didn't want people to feel it's some type of a product that looks a medical product, right? Because we want to make it very easy for people to use. And the way it is done is so easy at home. Like even for blood, you don't have to go somewhere to draw the blood. It is literally, you finger prick it, 4 drops of blood. There is a small pipette. You put the pipette next to it, draws the 4 drop of blood. You put in the test tube, prepaid envelope, touch of a stool, prepaid envelope, and you're done. Literally done. 10 days, 2 weeks later, you have and the app, it tells you everything that we saw. So all the insights into your body, and it tells you, here are your superfoods, here are your foods to avoid. For everyone, it tells you why. So here are your superfoods and why. Here are your foods to avoid and why. Here are your foods to enjoy. Here are your foods to minimize. And the supplements that you can order, made to order for yourself, or you can just go buy them from Amazon. But in that case, you're getting a whole bunch of stuff that you don't need and paying 10 times more for the stuff that you don't need. So that means you could be spending $500-600 a month getting these supplements and most of the stuff you don't need, versus we just only put the stuff that you need and give it to you on a monthly price, very substantially cheaper than what you would buy. Now, the
Absolutely.
other interesting part that you mentioned was the food sensitivity test. I just want to say it because I think most people don't realize the food sensitivity is actually about IgG, which is the immune system antibodies for these food. Now, why would a food ever go into the blood for your immune system to create antibody? Think for a second.
Because you have leaky gut. You got leaky gut, then
Thank
the
you.
food is getting in there into your, like, you eat some carrot, tiny piece of carrot gets in. For me, it's banana. I mean, I'm just so depressed about this. I loved banana, and now I have such a negative, my body just retches and has such a negative reaction to banana um out, out of nowhere, but it's leaky gut. So I ate some banana, I had leaky gut, the little particles of
Yep.
banana got into the
Yep.
bloodstream. My immune system attacked it because it's a foreign body, it's not supposed to
Yep.
be in the immune system. Anything injected into the bloodstream that the body didn't create is a foreign body that the immune system is going to mount a response against, and
Yep.
it's not supposed to be there. And so now my immune system, anytime if I were to eat a banana, my immune system would mount a huge response, and my gut totally hates it.
But here's very interesting thing. So there are 2 points to make. One was, if you have a leaky gut, you're going to get the antibodies for almost every food that you eat a lot of, because a little bit of it's always going to end up in the blood, and you're going to get. So literally, the IgG tells you that you have a leaky gut, because if you are allergic to all these foods, all that means is you have a leaky gut. Not that you really are sensitive to those foods, it is what they show. Now, if you fix the leaky gut because these antibodies go away in 6 months or 9 months, then you would be able to eat the food more often than not. Most of the IgGs goes away, right? So in a sense, if you can now fix the leaky gut and you can tighten the epithelial barrier, then many of those IgGs just disappear. Right. So my point I'm trying to make is that it's really the food sensitivity test is a wrong word. You're not sensitive to those foods. You simply have a leaky gut. Right.
Hmm.
So point is, food should never be in the blood to begin with, and there should not be an antibody. You're not sensitive to those foods. You made them sensitive by eating the foods when you had a leaky gut. That's all happened.
And your test, following the advice after doing your test, would allow us to seal up the gut and heal it, so we no longer have a leaky gut.
That is correct. So one of the score that we give you is actually the intestinal barrier health. That means how tightly your intestinal barrier is actually regulated. That means you want to keep it nice and tight, and we give you all the foods and supplements to make sure that it's not the only reason it gets permeable or leaky is because of the inflammation. As you can see, inflammation stretches the thing, and that causes it to get the junctions to get loose. So the best thing you can do is to reduce the stuff that causes inflammation, increase the stuff that is anti-inflammatory, get more foods that are going to give the nutrients that your body needs. And again, remember, there is no such thing that good things, the more of the good thing is better. That is another thing that most people actually make mistakes on. So for example, people think somehow, you probably heard that, you take NAD, and NAD is really good for longevity. It increases your mitochondrial biogenesis, and it's going to make you younger and you're going to live longer. And it turns out there was a research that came out, I think 2 months ago, that shows that actually the NAD precursor NMN and NMH, it when you have high inflammation or high cellular senescence, it causes the cytokine storm and causes the inflammation to get even worse. Right. So the point is, because when you have higher mitochondrial biogenesis, you are actually now creating more free radicals. And if your free radicals were already being overstressed because they were not getting cleaned up, now you even have more high amount of free radicals that are going to cause more inflammation in your body and higher cellular stress.
So it just cascades, and it's like a domino effect, and people are often just eating whatever they want. You go to a restaurant, you go to a friend's house, or your spouse cooks, you cook, you cook something that your kids like to eat. We just throw anything into our mouth, just whatever. Okay, just order Thai food. Let's just eat that. And that now there's a ton of ingredients in there that might be, triggering to your microbiome. Okay, now we're going to order pizza tonight. Okay, now we're going to go to McDonald's drive-through.
Yeah.
Or we're going to go to Starbucks. And it's interesting, though. I got to tell you, my husband switched from Starbucks to just a different kind of coffee at one point in his life.
Yeah.
And he noticed a huge health change, and he looked into it, and he saw that there's stuff in Starbucks, in Starbucks, like there's ingredients they put in their coffee
Yeah.
that will disrupt your health. And if someone were to just switch to a cleaner organic coffee, many people have noticed emotional health changes as well as physical changes.
Yeah.
So if you want to have, let's say you wanted to have a pizza, there's a difference between something you make at home from scratch, with your own ingredients, and you know exactly what's on it, versus just the delivery pizza. If we make pizza, we have like a cauliflower crust, and I make my own, sauce on it, and we don't have any cheese, and we put some vegetables on it, and we can make something really healthy. But when we do, which a lot of people are doing right now, is ordering out at restaurants, right? We're throwing just random stuff at our microbiome to handle, thinking, well, I've actually, but one of my clients recently said, my poop is fine. My poop's fine. I'm good. My poop is fine. And I thought that was just the weirdest response. I don't need to change my diet. My poop is fine. I get enough fiber. Like, I'm fine. I poop. It's okay. And I just thought that's so interesting that someone thinks that they have a healthy gut just because they poop.
Couple of interesting points you brought up, Ashley, here. I think people, same thing on supplements. Oh, I heard my friend tell me that the elderberry is really, really good for me not to catch COVID, and I should be taking vitamin C and vitamin D, and I should take this. And they have no idea what that thing's doing to your body. You just hear it, you read about it in some magazine, you say, oh, I need the green coffee extract because it helps me lose weight. Really? My point is, all these things, you get every single magazine there. Here are the 10, supplements you should buy. Here are the 10 ingredients to your superfood. And you're always looking for the, what is it that you need? And you keep popping more and more. And in the morning, you're taking, 20 pills just to make sure you got everything that everybody has mentioned that to you, and end up harming yourself rather than actually helping yourself, right? And that is really the trick, is to know what exactly your body needs and how much, rather than just thinking somebody recommended, so I'm going to take it. And I think it's not just the food, but also, as you mentioned, how you prepare it and where you buy it, right? If let's assume tomatoes are good for you. If not, that you can now buy some tomatoes which are, obviously all kinds of pesticides in them. You may still want to get a good organic tomatoes. How you cook the food, the tomatoes are more beneficial when they are cooked rather than when they are raw. Like we eat pizza just like you do. We sometimes make a whole wheat at home pizza, no cheese on it, and we put so many different colors of vegetables on it, and we make our own tomato sauce, and then we actually now cook the tomato sauce with basils and stuff and herbs, and then we and oregano, and we literally our own pizza that I think is pretty healthy. So it's not the pizza is bad, it is the ingredients on the pizza and everything else you put on top of that, and the crust itself that may be the one that's causing problems.
Exactly. Now, I'd love to know a little bit more about your company and Viome. Tell us about the history of Viome as a company, because I know that you have a mission and that you see a future where Viome is helping the world to make chronic disease an option, where someone
Mhm.
can say, they get this testing and then they go, okay, I can choose this path and go down this road of disease, or I can choose this path and go down this road of health. And that we're not forcing it upon anyone, but it is giving people information and giving them the ability to make better educated choices about everything they put into their mouth, because they'll have the science to know what is the optimal thing that they could eat and put in their mouth or drink at every moment of the day to maximize their longevity and their health. Tell us about, so Viome I know has this mission that you're seeing where you're going in the future, but tell me about your past. How did
Yeah.
Viome get started? How long have you guys been doing this? What kind of doctors and scientists are behind it?
The technology for Viome came from Los Alamos National Lab, which is really had designed this for the biodefense work. And this is the only technology that's available to be able to actually measure the gene expression, preserve your RNA, measure your gene expression, and find out what molecules from the gene expression, what molecules are being produced. And then we use the AI to be able to say, this is what's happening in the body. Here are the bioactive compounds in these food, how your gut, which is really a chemical factory, is going to turn a food chemical into what will be the output. So it's not like, oh my gosh, it's complex chemical factory, but once you know what are the bioactive compound in a food, then you can see what they're going to translate them into, what is the poop of the chemical factory that's going to come out, and is that going to be good for you or the bad for you, right? So that is so we started out this company 4 years ago. And anytime I start a company, Ashley, I ask myself three questions. One is why this, why now, and why me? And why this is the first question is, God forbid I am actually successful in doing what I'm about to be doing. Is it going to be able to help a billion people live a better life? And if the answer to that is no, then I'm thinking, why would I dedicate 10 years of my life to doing something that does not move the needle? And the reason for that is whether you do something small or you do something big, it takes every ounce of energy and it takes every effort to do something. So why not do something that is meaningful and that's going to literally improve the lives of as many people as you can? And the second part of that thing are you truly obsessed about solving this problem? And I didn't use the word passion because a lot of the people talk about I'm passionate about this. In my world, the passion is for losers. Passion is for hobbies, right? Right? Passion is like I am passionate about meteorites. That's a passion. That's not obsession. Obsession is I go to sleep thinking about how do I solve the problem of chronic diseases. I jump out of the bed at 4 a.m. thinking about how do I go solve this problem. And part of this obsession comes from having lost my own dad to pancreatic cancer and watching him go through the system that could have easily not only prevented the cancer, could have also cured the cancer, but they would not go beyond what is the current practice, right? I showed him all the research, how pancreatic cancer is caused by the gut microbiome going through the bile duct into pancreas, showed him the research, how the researchers in in fact, injected the antibiotics directly into pancreas, killed the microbiome, and the immune system killed the cancer. Showed him the research. I said, all I want you to do is just put antibiotics in his pancreas.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and I would take the responsibility. I would, my dad will sign the thing. I'm going to sign the thing. You are not responsible. They say we will not do it because that's not what's allowed. Now I could not do anything.
Mm.
Nothing I could do, and watch him die. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, look, I can't save your life, but I'm going to dedicate my life to making sure no one else has to suffer. No one has to suffer from cancer. No one has to suffer from diabetes, obesity, heart disease, or watch someone lose memory from Alzheimer or have Parkinson's. I just don't want that to happen to anyone else. So that's my obsession. Why now is really the part of it is you have to believe that what had changed in the last 5 years that allows you to do this now than 10 years ago. The reason is if something could have been done 20 years ago and if nobody's doing it, you have to assume you're not the smartest guy in the world. Somebody would have solved this problem. So there has to be what had changed, right? To digitize the human body, the cost of sequencing has to come down. So when we started, the cost of sequencing would have been several $1,000s. And we
Mm-hmm.
said, look, it is an exponential curve. I know in the next couple of years it's going to come down. We'll be able to use robotics and bring it down. And we said, let's go do that. Second part of it was, is the computers are going to be powerful enough to be able to analyze this petabytes of data that's going to come out of it? This cost of computing is going to kill us. And the answer was, you can fire up 1,000 cores on Amazon Web Service and you'll survive. And the cost of processing is coming down to zero. AI has to be powerful enough to analyze this massive data because every single person, you're now looking at, tens of thousands of these gene expression, and you have to analyze for every single thing. And then you see that's massive AI. Is it powerful enough? The answer was yes, it is happening now. The last part is the most, I would say, interesting part from me, entrepreneurial perspective, called why me? Why me is what is it that I believe that other people are not thinking about? What question that I am asking that is different from what everyone else is asking? And that's why they're solving the wrong problem, or they are working on a different problem, or they are never going to get to solving the problem. Their question is completely wrong. And let me give you a couple of examples of that, what I mean by asking the right question. So my other company is Moon Express, where we are trying to make humanity a multi-planetary society. Can we settle down on the moon and then essentially take that humanity into Mars and Pluto and beyond? And the reason for that is, all 8 billion of us are living on a single spacecraft. And God forbid, if we get hit by a large asteroid, the humanity is going to get completely wiped out, right? It's not the planet won't survive. Planet will do just fine. Remember 65 million years ago when a asteroid hit the planet, all the dinosaurs completely got wiped out. And
Mm-hmm.
dinosaurs were much larger than us. The planet actually did just fine. Planet did so fine, it created humans, right? Now, we may get wiped out and it may create superhumans for all we know, right? But the point is, if you can hear any dinosaur rolling in their grave, what would they be saying? If they had one good entrepreneur dinosaur, they'll be roaming on the moon, Mars, and beyond, right? So I thought, what if we can do that? Now, what do you think the first question people asked when we say, hey, we can live on the moon? They say, how are you going to grow the food on the moon? And my thinking was, wait a second, that's the wrong question. Instead of asking, how to grow the food on the moon, what if we ask a different question? Why do we eat food? Because if you ask the question, how to grow the food, the only solution is to grow the food. But if you ask a slightly different question, which is, why do we eat food? Now, there are many solutions. You eat food for energy and you eat for nutrition. What if you can get energy from radiation? What if you get energy from photosynthesis? What kind of nutrition you need? Hydrogen, oxygen. What if you can get that from water? But the point is, just by changing the question, now you had plethora of possibilities rather than just growing the food. Same thing happened in the space of Viome. When we say, look, the research is clearly showing the gut microbiome is key to the chronic diseases. There are tens of companies doing microbiome as service. Why is the problem not getting solved? And it turns out that everyone was asking the same question. I want to know what organisms are in our gut. And I say, what if the question is different, which is what they are producing? And if we can solve that problem, then we will be able to solve the chronic diseases. And that's the reason I started Viome. And then, by the way, we hired the head of IBM Watson, who worked on the AI, and he runs our AI. We hired the best genetic expression people out of human longevity with Craig Venter's team. That Craig Venter, as you know, is the guy who sequenced the human genome. And then the guy who developed the technology for Los Alamos, Dr. Momo Vucic, we actually hired him to go develop this technology for us. So we got the best and the brightest from around the world to solve the problem that we wanted to solve. And this is another interesting point, Ashley, is that if you set out to solve a problem, like how to make chronic diseases optional, you get the best and the brightest because they want this to be their legacy. That the smartest people want to work on the toughest problems, right? And that's why it's easier to solve a audacious problem than to solve a smaller problem. And so that's really the history now in 4 years as we have come along. We have, helped hundreds of thousands of people. And if you just literally look at the emails I get every month about number of people telling me that you saved my life, you saved my wife, you have changed the way, I thought I was going to die and now I am, I can walk. I mean, it's just unbelievable amount of comfort you get that your hard work is not being wasted. You're doing something that actually improves people's lives. And that, really my goal is provide actionable information to people that they can act on rather than simply do things and give you information that is non-actionable, right? So, like my DNA test, I'm 6 times more likely to get Alzheimer. Enjoy. What am I going to do with it?
That's true, right? You go get those DNA tests and they just say,
Yeah.
here's what you could have. Like, Angelina Jolie has her breasts removed because she has
Yeah.
the BRCA gene. Well,
Yeah.
the BRCA gene doesn't mean you're going to have breast cancer. And in fact,
Exactly.
when the BRCA gene expresses in a healthy way, it prevents breast cancer. So
Yes.
she was worried about the BRCA gene expressing in an unhealthy way that would create breast cancer. But why, and then she continues eating McDonald's, continues eating whatever she wants and disrupts a bad microbiome. And cancer can show up at anywhere. It doesn't have to show up in the breast. She could get a different kind of cancer. What's she going to do? Remove everything? Cut out all her organs? It just infuriates me that women are being told, and I've had clients where the women were told to have full hysterectomies and their ovaries removed because their sister had ovarian cancer or their sister had, some form of cancer that was triggered by hormones. And so because it's in their family, in their genes, all the women in their family should have their ovaries removed or should have this is ridiculous. This isn't preventive medicine. To remove organs to prevent cancer is ludicrous. Absolute ludicrous.
And more than that, I mean, these genes would not have actually evolved through the selection if they were always bad for you. I mean, think about that. They would have been wiped out from the human population if they
Yes.
were bad for everyone, right? I mean, same thing, by the way, for Alzheimer's, it's called APOE6. I mean, APOE6, it turns out in the Amazonian forest, they have 8 or 10 copies of them and they never develop Alzheimer. In fact, it turns out it is supposed to protect you against all types of bacterial infection because they have so much of the mosquito-borne diseases. It protects them from all that diseases. That's why they have these many copies of things. Elephant has 8 more times more the same APOE6 gene, and elephant never gets Alzheimer, right?
And
So my
and an
point is,
elephant never forgets.
and never forget that you have it, right? So my point is, this is literally what these GWAS studies are so bogus. In fact, it turns out when you look at these GWAS, which is genomic wide association study, they did 20 studies on depression, and they basically will take 200 people who are depressed and say, oh, look at this, what we found in common. And the 20 separate research were published all differently, right? One guy decided that he's going to do a meta research of look at all these 20 research and see what is in common. And he concluded there is not a single gene that is actually in common between these 20 research that causes depression. It is nothing but measuring the noise, because anytime you can find a pattern in the noise, when you have these millions of these genes, you're going to find something out there that's common between these 200 people and you publish a paper. Doesn't mean that it's actually causing the disease.
Like they all ate apples.
Yeah.
Right. It must be apples because they all ate an apple on a Tuesday. It's not about the gene, is what you're saying. It's about the gene expression, and that's epigenetics, because we epigenetically can turn gene expression on and off depending on the nutrients that are available. So people can express in a way that develops a disease, and then the body, you give the body new nutrients, different nutrients, and the body then expresses in a healthy way that suppresses that disease. And so it all comes back to the food. But you take it one step deeper and go back to the microbiome. So it all comes back to what we're feeding the microbiome, because the microbiome is feeding us these chemicals. And we have to regulate the chemicals, or optimize the chemicals the microbiome is feeding us in order to optimize our own health.
Agreed.
I'm
Agreed. And
very excited.
That's literally what it does. And I really hope that your audience gets to go try this, because I'll tell you that it will change their life. It will fundamentally, small changes will have massive impact on their own, and they can feel it. Not only it will improve their health from inside out, they will be able to feel it, and they will feel younger, they will look better, they'll have more energy, the mental fog, all this stuff, and hopefully prevent all these chronic diseases from happening. And every single person who joins also essentially helps everyone else before them and after them, so that we can together understand what is causing these diseases and prevent it from future generation. And even if we don't do it for ourselves, let's do it for our children and grandchildren.
Absolutely. As we've been sitting here, I'm thinking, well, I'm definitely going to do the health intelligence service, which you give listeners a discount. So please, listeners, you can go to viome.com, Viome.com, and use the coupon code LTH, as in Learn True Health. Use the coupon code LTH for your discount. So I'm going to get the health intelligence service, but I'm also going to get it for my husband, because like you said, and I just know this, him and I react differently to different foods. I'll feed him at dinner, and all of a sudden his gut looks like he's 9 months pregnant, and he's because he's fermenting, right? And whereas I ate
Yep.
that dinner and my gut's great, I'm like, oh, that felt wonderful. But for him, it made him bloated. And then there's another meal I'll make and I get bloated and he doesn't. So we definitely have the different, two different microbiomes going on that we need to help. But what about my son? So my son's 5 years old, and we have a lot of listeners with children. Can children do this as well?
Yes, they can, but the parents have to consent to it.
Of course. Well, yeah, because we'd be the one pricking the finger for the blood and
Yeah, exactly.
collecting the stool sample. That's right. So walk us through. So is it saliva, stool sample, and a little prick of blood that we can all do it in the comfort of our own home?
Yeah, so this currently the health intelligence only has blood and stool. We are launching the next product, which is going to be the whole body intelligence that will also include saliva, but that's currently not available. So only product available are gut intelligence and health intelligence.
Got it. And so very soon you'll have the one that has all three.
Yes.
So we've talked a lot about gut intelligence. I'm interested in about microbiome. How does your health intelligence service, what kind of information does it give us to help us to optimize optimize mitochondrial health? I'm really interested also in supporting the mitochondrial health. You talked about how the gut talks to our mitochondria. And so is it that by correcting the gut and supporting the gut health, supporting the microbiome, we're supporting mitochondria, or are there further steps to take to support mitochondria?
Well, first of all, I mean, as you pointed out earlier, Ashley, that Mitochondria is an organelle inside our own cell. It has its own genes. It replicates itself just like any other bacteria. So inside our cells, these bacterial cells is a constantly replicating. It has its own 12 genes. We look at its own gene expression to see how much of energy it is producing, how much it is replicating, which is called mitochondrial biogenesis. That makes us actually, so when the cells divide, you need the mitochondria, you need all the energy. So if you don't have enough mitochondrial biogenesis happening, you're going to start feeling tired. You don't have enough energy, cells are going to die. Right? So we look at all of the mitochondrial biogenesis. Then remember, if you go back to high school biology, the mitochondria is the one that completes the Krebs cycle, that ATP cycle, right? So you take you take a glucose, and it actually gets converted into ATP. And that if anything inside that to complete that cycle, there are a whole bunch of coenzymes that they need. So for example, if you're missing some coenzyme like CoQ10, then you may actually not be able to produce energy. And then we will actually give you the food that are high in CoQ10 or the supplement that contains CoQ10. And so literally by looking at your mitochondrial gene expression, we are able to recommend the food that are good for you, and recommend the food that you should avoid, and also include them in the right set of supplements. If there are certain things that you're not producing but you need, we give them to you as an augmentation or supplement with that. And we do the same thing with, by the way, cellular side. So by looking at your blood, we're looking at your cellular senescence. These are the cells that neither died, but they're still alive producing toxins. And the cellular senescence causes aging. So we have to also worry about them, making sure that how do we go out and making sure these cells don't become these zombie cells, right? So we look at your cellular stress. You look at, as I said, stress response. We look at your immune system health, because your immune system is highly inflamed. Not only at that point, your essentially your body is going to constantly be in inflamed mode, causing a whole bunch of diseases and getting your organs to start failing, but also you're not prepared to be able to deal with the infection, whether it is cold or flu or COVID, right? So to be able to get your immune system right in the place, that's the reason, I recommend that people do the health intelligence test, because they get a most comprehensive insight into their body, and the recommendations are now based on more information rather than just the gut information.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm really excited about your pricing. Just thinking about the last time I got blood work at my, annual visit with my naturopath, even after having insurance pays for only so much because, you've got deductibles. I
Yep.
actually paid more. I paid more out of pocket than having your test. So it cost me more to get all these other tests, whereas they didn't actually tell me the blood tests I get that I pay a ton for, even with insurance at the doctor's office, doesn't tell me what to do. I mean, the doctor's supposed to tell you what to do, but most doctors don't. Like most doctors go, okay, well, I guess we got to get you on statins now, and you're going to get on metformin soon, and because MDs will use blood tests to determine if you need to get on drugs. That's not health, right? We've got two different philosophies of thinking. The mainstream philosophy of medicine is wait till you get sick and then get on a drug, which will probably make you sicker, but whatever. We'll suppress symptoms in the body, and you'll do that till you die, and maybe get on more drugs as you age. And then there's the other way to think, which is I want to get so healthy I don't need to be on medication. I want to get so healthy that I optimize myself and I look 40 when I'm 60. Like I want a blood test that I pay hundreds of dollars for at the doctor's office to actually tell me what to do. Okay, here's the information. Here's where you are. Now here's what you should do to get better. Right. And so that's been my frustration, even though, yes, I get to sit down with the naturopath and they look over, here's your A1C hemoglobin. Okay, you're getting better. Here's your triglycerides. Oh, they're a little up. You should and the naturopath would be like, eat less, because I eat brown rice. They're like, eat less brown rice. Well, what do you mean eat less brown rice? Like, is that really what's causing high triglycerides? So, and we go through all these different things on the blood test, and at the end of the day, I was left kind of confused because it was sort of muddled. Like, well, keep taking your supplements and maybe eat a little less brown rice, and see you in a year when you pay another, $500 for all your workup. And that just drives me up the wall when I'm not given a really clear, intelligent, scientific path to take. So here enters your third option. The third option is your testing. Now you're not saying don't go to a doctor, don't go to a naturopath. You can absolutely continue that route, but taking the health intelligence service that you offer in the comfort of your own home, and now you're given very, very specific instructions on what you can put in your mouth to optimize your health, and then you do it in another 4 months or so, and then you see that you're getting better. You see that you're progressing. And if someone were to do that for a year, they're going to get such better results than if they just waited to get sick, go to the MD and get on drugs, or saw like a holistic practitioner who just took a bunch of blood and then said, well, we'll keep monitoring this, but maybe eat a little bit less rice. I don't know. Let's and they have no idea because they didn't test for what your microbiome needs and what your mitochondria needs. So I'm very excited for what you're doing. I'm really, really excited to take the test myself and my husband and my son. And I know that some listeners are going to absolutely want to take the health intelligence service test and join me in trying this and seeing how they can optimize their entire body, every cell in their body, to be fully nutrified, because they're eating to feed the gut, to make the gut biome make exactly what we need. So this is just so cool. I love it. I love that you're integrating it's finally the right time, like you said. It's the right time because now the costs can be driven down so low because of AI and because of the way machines can be used, robots can be used in labs. Now gene sequencing isn't thousands of dollars. Like when I started the podcast 4 years ago, it was thousands of dollars to take tests similar to this, and now it is a few $100s. So this is very exciting. I definitely want to have you back on the show after I take the test and after my husband and I do this. We can follow up, and I'm sure we can talk more about, because like you said, your company is releasing this next test shortly, and this so there'll be more information to talk about, but I'd love to come back and have you continue to share what Viome is doing in the future as you unfold more and more exciting services in your effort to make chronic disease optional. So this is very exciting. I definitely want to have you back on the show. Is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up today's interview?
I would say, first of all, Ashley, thank you very much for hosting me. And all I can say is that, keep dreaming and dream so big that people think you're crazy, and never, ever be afraid of what you want to do, because imagination is the only thing that stops us from achieving what we want. So let's just keep moving the humanity forward. Let's just keep doing the things individually, what we can, to contribute back to the humanity. And I look forward to coming back and talking more.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Listeners can go to viome.com, Viome, and use the coupon code LTH. Join me in doing the health intelligence test, and let's feed our gut what the body needs. It's so exciting. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Naveen Jain from Viome.com. You can go to Viome.com, Viome.com, and use coupon code LTH, as in Learn True Health, coupon code LTH for your listener discount. And please join the Learn True Health Facebook group and come tell us about your experience. And I'd also love for you to join the Facebook group and share what you thought about this episode, other episodes. Come ask questions. It's a free community of wonderful, holistic minded people who want to achieve true health. I look forward to hearing everyone's results with using the Viome experience, the Viome feedback from their tests and their app. And I can't wait to do it myself. So I'll let you guys know how it goes in a few weeks after I get my results back and start eating specifically for my mitochondria and my microbiome. And I can't wait to hear back from you guys and hear how it's helping you as well. Excellent. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. And I hope wherever you are, you get to go out in nature, put your feet in grass, have sunlight on your face, take a few deep breaths, and think of things that you are grateful for. Help ground yourself and come into yourself and feel love and gratitude for all the trillions of cells in your body and all the wonderful energy that's flowing through you. God bless.